citing a 2014 Supreme Court ruling on its favor.
Walang kapangyarihan yung Pangulo na disiplinahin ang Deputy Ombudsman dahil ito ay paglabag sa independence ng Ombudsman.
But Malacanang is bent on having its way.
We will implement the order. If he wants to go to court, because I understand he's saying it's unconstitutional, let him.
And also from one legal battle to another. Is charter change inevitable? And are we ready for a federal form of government?
The heart of the Constitution is social justice. The problem is not the Constitution, but our legislators who slept on the job for 30 years to fully implement it.
Constitutional expert attorney Christian Monsod joins us live. And later, take a look at the world's longest zip line. That's for today's In Focus. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. The Office of the Ombudsman refuses to enforce a suspension order on one of its officials, saying that the President has no jurisdiction to discipline their office. Deputy Ombudsman Melchor Carandang was suspended for supposedly spreading false information on President Rodrigo Duterte's bank accounts. Malacanang, however, stands firm, saying it is bent on implementing the suspension order. And also, as the debate on charter change rages on, can the proposed shift to a federal form of government take place under the Duterte administration? Let's go straight to the source of the story. Constitutional expert, attorney Christian Monsod. Attorney, welcome to the show. Good to see you again.
Thank you for inviting me.
Two topics we need to discuss. First, I'm going to talk about the order of the Executive Secretary through Malacanang on Melchor Carandang. Malacanang, through the office, said you're suspended for 90 days. Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales defying this order, citing a 2014 ruling. How would you describe the situation right now? Is this a constitutional crisis? Is this an impasse? Is this a confrontation? What is it?
Well, we're close to a crisis because there's a difference between the President and the head of the Ombudsman, Carpio Morales, which is an independent body. It's part of the checks and balances of our Constitution.
How do you feel about it, as a lawyer, as a constitutional expert, that we are faced with something like this? Because I'll be frank, sir. I mean, before we went on air, I was telling you that it actually really confuses me on who is supposed to be followed or who is right.
Well, the one that should be followed right now is the decision of the Supreme Court of 2014, which said that the Deputy Ombudsman and Special Counsel are not subject to discipline by the President, which said that Section 8, Paragraph 2 of the law on the Ombudsman is unconstitutional.
We have that graphics, sir. We declared Section 8, 2 of RA 6770 as unconstitutional by granting disciplinary jurisdiction to the President over, I think this is important, over a Deputy Ombudsman in violation of the independence of the Office of the Ombudsman. Meaning, hindi po pwede disiplinahin ng Malacanang si Deputy Ombudsman. Is it as clear as day?
Yes, it's very clear. As a matter of fact, the Supreme Court quoted me in the Constitutional Commission, where I said that what we need is and I have to quote it because it says here, that's in the record, we want a commission to function even under the worst circumstances when the executive is not cooperating, right? And so we really wanted to protect the Ombudsman, because the Ombudsman is supposed to protect the people. That's the job of the Ombudsman. So that it has to be very independent. How can it be independent if it is investigating or looking at the acts of a person who can discipline and remove them?
An official at that.
No, that's yeah.
But would you say to some it seems, sir, like a conflict of interest when you have an overall deputy ombudsman supposedly investigating the president on alleged bank accounts, and then the office of the president suspending the deputy ombudsman?
It's especially notable that the president in this case is not protecting a subordinate, but seems to be protecting himself.
let's look at that unconstitutional jurisprudence in 2014. Of course, this has something to do with the Deputy Ombudsman. I think his name was Gutierrez, sir, in the past. This is one thing I wanted to find out from you as a constitutional expert. If a case like this is brought to the Supreme Court, and I understand, of course, we know that the vote was 8-7. It was a very close vote. Can a similar situation, such as that of Melchor Carandang, be brought to the Supreme Court and it be reversed?
Yes. In a very few instances, the Supreme Court has reviewed cases that have already entry of judgment, but it's very exceptional because of the nature of the principle of the sanctity of jurisprudence. But sanctity is not equivalent to infallibility, and that's why the Supreme Court has, in a very few cases, done that. Now,
so it's not going to be out of the ordinary.
What should concern us? Is there really a pattern of voting in the Supreme Court in the its recent decisions? Because in 3 instances, the burial of President Marcos, martial law, and the detention of De Lima, there seems to be a pattern, not absolute, there seems to be a pattern of decisions on the basis of who the appointing power is. And we have to watch this, whether this is a real pattern or whether it's just coincidental. But in these 3 cases, there seems to be a pattern.
And how many are they in that pattern, sir? Marcos, burial, De Lima?
Yeah. In the present situation today, there are 6 justices appointed by President Arroyo, 5 justices appointed by Aquino, and 4 justices appointed by Duterte. So that's the
breakdown.
Power, the breakdown. So you have to take a look at the decision and how they voted to see that there seems to be a pattern. A majority of 8 or 9 coming from mainly from the appointees of Arroyo and the appointees of Duterte. But the Supreme Court has its golden moments.
Do you think that golden moment will happen this time around?
Well, there was a golden moment in 2006 when the Supreme Court struck down the Sigaw ng Bayan of President Arroyo at a time when there were 10 justices appointed by Arroyo, and the Supreme Court decided by an 8-7 vote against Sigaw ng Bayan.
But was there a pattern before?
With them voting 5-5. So there are golden moments, and we hope there will be more.
And you're hoping that something similar will happen in the future rulings. I guess to summarize that, attorney, the 5 appointed by President Aquino have voted together.
Not all the time.
In the 3?
Maybe, yeah.
The Marcos?
No, not in all 3. There was 1 or 2 who did not quite vote the same way.
I see. All right. So it's possible that a case be now. The question is, you said that it's possible, and it's not out of it's a little bit extraordinary that the Supreme Court will reverse its decision on this. However, here's the thing, sir. If a justice voted and said that it's unconstitutional, let me just be very blunt about it. If a justice had voted and said it's unconstitutional for the president to discipline a deputy ombudsman, and then the case is brought forward, can that particular justice reverse the decision and say, okay, I changed my mind?
Nothing prohibits a justice from changing his mind.
But what does that say about
Doesn't say much, because maybe he realized that his first decision was wrong. Maybe he researched some more. We cannot make a presumption that the shift in the vote is political. That has to be proven.
Okay, and that would be very difficult also to prove as well.
Yes.
Looking into the 10 days, though, that Malacanang gave Melchor Carandang, if I were to do the count, attorney, that 10th day should lapse somewhere tomorrow or Wednesday.
Yeah.
What can happen?
Well, if the ombudsman refuses to enforce it, then the ball is in the court of the government to go to the Supreme Court. because the only one who can review the decisions of the Ombudsman and only on questions of law is the Supreme Court.
So, Secretary Harry Roque, from my understanding, was saying the only way this will not be enforced is if Mr. Carandang files a TRO. Are you saying that's not right?
No, it's the Ombudsman who's refusing to implement it. And invoking the independence of the office of the Ombudsman, there's a question of law.
So it's Malacanang. Is it supposed to be the Mandamus?
Well, the ball is in the court of Malacanang.
Oh, okay. Just very quickly, let's bring in the soundbite of Secretary Harry Roque on this.
We will implement the order. If he wants to go to court, because I understand he's saying it's unconstitutional, let him, but we will not go to court because our reading is the Office of the President has the power to discipline him.
Is the Office of the President has the power to do this?
The ball is in his court. There has been all kinds of threats about, forcing him to leave the office, and I don't know, maybe sending the police to the military. So it's in the court of the president, and it is up to the president whether to enforce it or to go to the Supreme Court.
Okay,
but not to use force to force him out of his office physically.
Attorney, they cannot go to his home or to the office of the Ombudsman and get him out.
That's not due process.
We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Coming up, an anti-dynasty law instead of federalism. Constitutional expert Attorney Christian Monsod will still be with us after the break. And later, find out where the longest zip line in the world can be found. That's for today's In Focus.
Have you ever looked for a hotel online? Did you notice that there are so many different prices out there for the exact...
I think this is a question of law.
So ayaw ni Ombudsman kayo dapat mag-question?
Question the Supreme Court. They're going to ask for a reversal of the decision because as the law stands now, he cannot.
But if you have Secretary Roque saying the President is the chief implementer of the law, where does that sit in all...
In general. But this is a specific question of law.
And there is
on
jurisprudence.
the exercise of that power.
Okay. Got it. Okay. I think it's supposed to lapse tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, the 10 days.
20 seconds.
I'll just say, the law today is...
Is that the 2014?
That's the law.
You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, constitutional expert Attorney Christian Monsod. Before we talk about federalism or the possible shift to federalism, just a couple of questions, Attorney. Some are saying that this is an impeachable action by both sides, the President or Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales, sir.
Well,
which one is an impeachable offense?
The law today is that the President cannot suspend or dismiss Deputy Ombudsman. That's the law. And by suspending him directly, didn't even go through the chair, the President can be said to have done something that's contrary to law. And that's one of the powers of the Office of the Ombudsman, to look into instances like this. Although the Ombudsman has no discipline over the impeachable officials of government, they have the right to investigate whether there has been a violation of law, a violation of the oath of the President.
Which part would be the violation of the law here?
By issuing a suspension order that is contrary to the decision of the Supreme Court, where it says that the President has no disciplinary power over the Deputy Ombudsman.
Is there a particular offense to this, Attorney Monsod? Like, it's not betrayal of public trust. Would it be...
It is doing something that's contrary to law.
Okay,
and therefore a violation of his oath.
Is that impeachable?
Yes.
All right, let's talk about federalism. You were at the Senate hearing, Senator Kiko Pangilinan also there. You were together with a lot of other, experts in law. I just want to kind of summarize your thoughts on this. You were clear in saying that the Constitution is not really the problem. What you're saying is the problem is the lawmakers, to use your words, sat on this for 30 years. Yes. That's where the problem lies.
Yes. My point is that the problem today is mass poverty and gross inequality, and that is the articulated purpose for this, as well as all past 6 attempts to change the Constitution, to improve the quality of life of all Filipinos, especially the poor. Is the answer changing the structure of the Constitution, or is the answer fully implement the Constitution? Because it has not been fully implemented by the Congress over a period of 30 years. And all the solutions are there. The social justice, asset reform laws, income reform provisions, and so on. And it's all there. And then the PDP Laban draft constitution even removes social justice as a central theme of the Constitution, and instead says now what is contained there is what do you call it? The aims of business, the agenda of business, and social justice is no longer a compelling principle. It's been removed. And social justice is just one of the means, like globalization, free trade, to have sustained growth. Right? That is wrong, because the central theme of the Constitution is social justice with the poor as the center of our development.
Well, how would you say, has it, I know you're saying that the lawmakers have not implemented it in the past 30 years, but how has the 1987 Constitution worked so far?
Well, let me put it this way. Let's take at asset reform, right? For example, they say, well, agrarian reform is a failure. It's not. Of the farmers who got proper support from the government, supporting services, 55% of those who received the land say the quality of their lives have improved. Right? But the 45, because they did not get supporting services, did not. And it's the farmers themselves who say, as far as we're concerned, it's a success. It only needs to be more successful than it is, not a failure.
Yeah.
Right? So that argument doesn't hold.
No, but who's to blame for that?
Congress, because Congress put loopholes in the law. In fact, they put loopholes in many, if not all, of the social reform programs, and then they underfunded those programs. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Agrarian reform. The total budget was $225 billion for 20 years. They appropriated $175 billion.
Okay.
Right? Okay, that's just one example.
For 20 years also, as you were saying, 225 billion, you said. Okay.
The
And then,
budget. They only funded it with about 175 billion.
which is a deficit of 50.
That's big, right? And the poor who suffered, the landowners got the compensation, but the poor did not get enough support services.
But the biggest argument, though, attorney, that they're saying is, just to try to put some sense or make it a little bit more digestible to us, is that with the present Constitution, it's too Manila-centric.
You're talking about different things.
Yeah.
You're talking about Imperial Manila. And,
but that's the argument used a lot.
Yes, that's true. But the Constitution also provides for local autonomy. That's why our Constitution is a hybrid. It's a multi-level unitary system because it mandates local autonomy, full autonomy, right? And that thing about Imperial Manila is about revolving more power and resources to the outlying regions. Well, Congress has not done that. Has not fully
And Congress
implemented.
can.
Yes. You know why? Part of it is this competing interest between the National Congress and the local provinces. There are dynasties, but dynasties are also not always the same in these areas. And that's, in fact, the World Bank has a study recently showing that that thing about the relationship between center and the outlying provinces. And the question is, when you do a federalism, what happens? Do you get rid of that? And moreover, are the dynasties going to be strengthened rather than made weaker? And the answer is they will be more entrenched with federalism.
There will be more dynasties.
Yes. We have about 200 clans who rule the country.
And with a federal/parliamentary form of government, attorney, what kind of scenario are we looking at? Because I don't remember who said it, but one of you guys did say that we are going to see more those clans, those dynasties
there'll be more.
propagating.
That's the in fact the findings or the of experts. You know. In the first place, we had a forum here, international forum in 2016 with 50 experts and so on, and they said that in a functioning system like ours, maybe it touches weaknesses, but somehow it works. You don't overhaul, you refine. You refine that system because there is no clear advantage of federal over unitary or unitary over federal. There is no clear advantage. So why are you going to take the risk with uncertain outcomes of a major surgery and a major change in your structure, right? Now, when we talk about Imperial Manila, there are ways to do that. That's called fiscal decentralization.
That's what you were talking about, fiscal decentralization.
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with strengthening the local government code, sir?
Yes, actually there was a national consultation in 2014, including local governments and so on, experts, academia, and they pointed out about 20 provisions in the local government code that should be amended or strengthened in order to have local autonomy, right? And one of them is to remove the provision that is the mother lode of the pork barrel system.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And you said, you know, there's pork barrel because of this provision, Section 17 of the local government code, which allows national agencies like the Public Works to have its own funding for regions, in addition to the, or outside of the funding that goes directly under a process of bottom-up funding, budgeting. And with this, the national agencies work with the legislators, so there's two channels going down, and that's not only wasteful, but sometimes results in money being pocketed by politicians.
Corruption.
Yes.
Yeah. So fiscal decentralization, but here's the thing, Attorney, you have Senator Nene Pimentel, the father of the local government code. Now you have the same person who is pushing for federalism and not even looking at possible fiscal decentralization or amending 20 provisions in the local government code. Now he's just saying we need a push to federalism. And the argument always...
I don't think he's saying that we can improve things by fiscal decentralization. What he wants really is change in structure. And my point is this, that even under this transition period, they say, well, let's change the structure first, and then let's enact all the legislation in order to empower and have fiscal decentralization. So my point is, why don't you work on it now? The fiscal,
first.
You should have started a year and a half ago on fiscal decentralization and postpone the change in structure.
Yeah.
Because only 3 of the 17 regions can stand on their own, and there cannot be federal unless 17.
There's 14 that cannot stand on their own.
Yes.
Yeah.
So empower them, strengthen them, and when they can stand alone, then you consider federalism, because that's the best way to do it. Strong regions uniting together for a strong union. That's it.
Hindi baliktad.
Yeah, hindi baliktad. Because if you baliktad unahin mo yung structure with uncertain outcomes, it could lead to the ruin of our democracy.
Do you think, sir, that's what the leaders of Congress are doing? There was a recent meeting between the leaders, Senate President Coco Pimentel, Speaker Alvarez, Majority Leader Soto, Majority Leader Fariñas. They had a meeting, and basically because there seemed to be, again, this problem between the Senate and Congress. Just 2 things, sir. They say that we're going to talk about what we can amend, what we can change first in the Constitution, and then we're going to talk about how we are going to do that. Do you support that? Let me get straight to that. Do you believe it?
No. First of all, there's already a precedent in 2010. Yung vote of all the members of Congress, that can happen in a grant of amnesty. The President Aquino had to change his proclamation to accommodate the concurrence of all the members, and the Congress met separately, voted separately. The House on December 13, 2010. The Senate December 14, 2010.
So in that provision, is that even a question for you? That particular provision in the Constitution that says Congress by a 3/4 vote. Again, arguably debated.
It should not be a problem. No. But I think the point is this. Those things like federalization, parliamentarism, they are means to an end. What is the real end? If we're going to help the poor, implement the Constitution fully, because that's where all the progress. Do not change the structure. And when you ask even PDP Laban, why are you changing the structure? First, would that really help the poor and also address inequality? They say, well, indirectly. Well, why don't you do it directly? Yes, fully implementing the Constitution.
Attorney Christian Mansod, good to have you, and thank you for your time. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. This is The Source on CNN Philippines Telecom. Just how long is the longest zip line in the world? We'll tell you on today's In Focus.
I didn't say nga yung parliamentary, that's another way, because parliamentary system, presidential or primary is horizontal distribution of powers. Federal or unitary is vertical. When you do parliamentarism, you combine the executive and the legislative.
Yes.
You're concentrating more power.
Yeah.
And then the judiciary is alone.
Yeah.
You have already destroyed the separation of powers and
among the
system
three.
Of checks and balances.
Yeah. Dalawa na lang.
Tapos
mas malakas na to.
How can the judiciary stand up to a combination of the executive
and the legislative? That's actually, that was actually a good point.
Yeah. So this thing about federalism and parliamentarism is about concentration.
Time now for today's In Focus here on The Source. How far can you go to test your limits? Why not try the biggest and baddest zip line in the world? Officials from Guinness just certified a brand new zip line in the United Arab Emirates as the longest run in the world. It's located on top of UAE's highest mountain. Thrill seekers that make the trek will reach speeds of up to 150 kilometers per hour as they move swiftly down the 2.7-kilometer long zip line. Here in the Philippines, the longest zip line found in Bukidnon is only 800 or 840 meters long. Adrenaline junkies looking for ride of their life are advised to secure reservations in advance. UAE's ultra-long zip line can only accommodate one rider every 5 minutes. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.